Welcome to Friday's Look North. In tonight's headlines, after the deluge, the clean-up begins, coming to terms with last night's unprecedented flash flooding.
It's just horrific. I've never seen anything like it, and it's the feeling of helplessness because there's nothing you can do. You're just left to your own devices, really.
Thousands without power, transport systems down, schools and businesses closed, and householders in shock.
Totally surprised. I mean, it came from about a foot from that door to coming in the door in about 2 to 3 minutes.
The storm lasted about 2 hours, but the damage will take much longer to repair. Also tonight, jail for the former policeman who tried to evade £20 million in tax in a massive cigarette smuggling operation.
And in sport, it's D-Day for the Falcons, but which way did the decision go? And world-class athletes choose Hexham for their last chance to qualify for the Olympics.
The storm has passed. Now, a major clean-up operation's underway after a violent thunderstorm wrought havoc in the northeast. These were the extraordinary scenes on Tyneside as heavy rain hit just before the evening rush hour. The storm flooded homes and businesses, cut power and brought the transport system for a time to a standstill. Amazingly, no one was seriously hurt.
This was the storm from the sky, and this was the havoc that it brought. Here a waterfall, not on a hillside but in a school in Gateshead. And here a river ran through Newcastle's Royal Grammar School, causing hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage.
And it was a torrent. It was a river running off the town moor through the school, spreading out 100 metres wide. I know that because that's the width of the pitch that it ran across. And then between the buildings, of course, it made a real torrent when it narrowed down again. It was dangerous stuff. I mean, we just had to stay in higher rooms and watch it.
And work is going on to repair the Royal Grammar School here in Newcastle. 6 inches of water came through here. The floor still very wet. It's one of over 40 schools in the region closed by the flooding. From Cumbria to Sunderland, shocking scenes. But perhaps this, the Tyne Bridge struck by lightning, will be the unforgettable image. Most distressing of all, the many homes and treasured belongings destroyed by floodwaters. One area badly hit was Heworth in South Tyneside.
I think you can see the devastation to the house. It's up to 4 feet on the walls. Carpets are absolutely ruined throughout. It was actually going up the stairs at one stage.
In Alnwick, this man's trying to cross the road, knocked over by the strong current. In Newcastle, stormwaters blow off a manhole cover, water exploding into the air. But also people helping others. This bus driver driving through a closed road to rescue those stranded. The storm came suddenly. It lasted for 2 hours. The clean-up will go on for weeks, maybe months. The memories will last for years. Sharon Barber, BBC Look North.
Well, we'll have reports from Northumberland, Tyneside and County Durham tonight. But first, to North Tyneside, dozens of families had to flee from properties and a care home was evacuated. The local authority had to put its emergency plan into action as the waters rose. Adele Robinson joins us now, live from Monkston. Adele.
Well, it's hard to imagine those scenes with which we've become most familiar with within the past 24 hours here on this street when the water levels actually reached waist high. The only evidence, as you can see behind me, rubble, debris, soaking carpets that have been strewn into people's front gardens all the way down this street. Around 70 properties were affected. Many of those people in those properties were evacuated and many of them returned this morning to see the true extent of the damage caused to their homes.
Scenes unbelievable to the eye. Gardens transformed to swimming pools, homes to swirling masses of dirty water.
It was a pretty rough night, wasn't it, last night? I think it was all hands to the pump when...
And though the clean-up has begun, a sense of devastation pervades.
Couldn't really say how much is actually trashed at the minute, but it's quite a lot. You seem quite upbeat.
Well, if not, I'll probably just end up breaking down, if I'm honest with you. So what else can you do, really?
Roy Marston's a council worker who came to the rescue of many homeowners like Neil and his family last night. Some were left trapped inside. Some had to even be lifted physically out of their houses to safety.
As we were busy moving people out, we had goldfish swimming past us, we had dogs swimming in the street, we had situations where a young child with a kayak. It was just a surreal experience, something I wouldn't like to see again, and I've never seen in all my times that I've lived here in North Tyneside.
And for Stuart Harding, it's the same story. He ended up walking 2 miles in his bare feet, at times waist deep in water, to a friend's house.
The wheelie bins were floating down the road. It was just absolute chaos, and no one could do a thing. You've just got to put up with it. Really, it was just frightening.
Memories lost, albums destroyed. There'll be irreplaceable loss for many like Stuart. The long-term financial cost, however, still isn't known.
Well, a lot of people have been asking here in the street today why this happened, and we've been told by the council they believe that what happened just behind these houses is the metro line. Because of the huge volume of water, it came down onto the metro line, there was a landslip, the water then cascaded through the gardens, houses and onto the streets. It's fortunate that more people weren't injured. I know of an elderly man down the road here who had to be physically carried out of his house and he was taken to hospital suffering from suspected hypothermia.
Oh dear, thank you very much, Adele. Well, things are getting back to normal now, but over 1,500 lightning strikes in less than an hour, along with the huge deluge of water that came with them, caused utter chaos right across the region. Over 50,000 homes lost power. The East Coast main line was closed by a landslide and hundreds of houses and shops were flooded. Across Tyneside, drivers were delayed for hours as the rush hour traffic turned to gridlock, as roads turned to rivers. The Tyne Tunnel had to close and the Tyne and Wear metro system, beset with all sorts of problems, had to be shut down as well. Jim Knight reports.
We're used to seeing scenes like this, but after tornadoes in America. But this, all of this, is the northeast of England in June. Everywhere you look, Thunder Thursday has left its mark, and just about everyone has a storm story to tell. At this control centre at Northern Power, they're still fielding thousands of calls from people who've been stranded without power.
In terms of the power network, the main issue is lightning strikes on the transformers and overhead lines. At peak, we had, unfortunately, around about 50,000 customers affected by those lightning strikes.
Water pouring down the hills caused this landslide near Berwick, which blocked the East Coast main line for several hours. And the Tyne and Wear metro fared little better. Battling with flooded tracks and all manner of electrical problems, they finally gave up at 6 last night and closed the whole system down.
That's the worst that Metro's ever seen, and it did cause damage across the system. Near Heworth, we lost 100 metres of track was covered in debris from a collapsed wall. The power was cut out by lightning strikes.
Even the Tyne Tunnel, which has never flooded in its 45 years, was finally beaten by Thunder Thursday.
The tunnel staff were monitoring on the cameras, and eventually it got to the point that the water levels were rising in the tunnel and we had to stop it for safety reasons.
Thankfully, things are slowly getting back to normal. Just 2,500 people are now waiting to get their power back on. The metro is back to a train every 15 minutes, except out to Monkseaton, and the East Coast main line is running a restricted service. Jim Knight, BBC Look North.
Doesn't seem real, does it? Well, all day, council workers, friends, neighbours and relatives have been pitching in to help clear up and clean devastated shops and businesses. One of the worst affected areas was Lanchester in County Durham, from where Stuart Wincup sent this report.
In a few short minutes, the high street here in Lanchester was flooded and the water was racing into the shops and businesses. This morning, the big clear-up started. Friends, neighbours and relatives all helping each other. 79-year-old Anne Sudders said she felt helpless when the water started coming through the front and back door of her house.
It was the speed that it happened at that was frightening. It was just a massive water. Yeah. It was just a sea, just a filthy It was the filth of it that was nasty.
Last night, like this morning, this small community came together. Anne and her elderly neighbours were trapped in their homes and were carried out of their properties.
Well, it was waist deep around the front, up to the front door, up to the back door, and nowhere for water to go. The whole community just came together and, you know, everybody just pulled together and got on with it.
All the time the bags were piling up. Some shops had more of their belongings on the street than on the shelves.
I've worked in the shop for 32 years, so I've seen it time and time again. Just got to get on with it. I'll probably not be able to claim much on my insurance because eventually they'll not insure us.
The businesses and homes have now been cleared. What can be saved has. They can't do any more till the dozens of insurance assessors descend on this small community. Stuart Wincup, BBC Look North, Lanchester.
Well, a holidaymaker has told BBC Look North about the moment she was almost swept away by the rising floodwater in Alnwick. Barbara Rowan, who's from Worcestershire, was visiting the market town for the first time when the storms hit. She was rescued by staff at a nearby estate agency. Chantal Edmonds reports.
Mopping up aside, it was business as usual in Alnwick today. But for holidaymaker Barbara Rowan, it was a day for reflection and thanks. She was parked with husband Richard outside estate agents George F. White in Alnwick when the waters started to rise and they decided to get out of their car.
The force of the water coming down here was so strong and we just got parted. Unfortunately, I was just swept down there in a torrent of water. It was just like a river and I was on the floor. And I noticed 2 lampposts and I thought those are my only chances. And I clung onto one, but the force was so much, it knocked me into the next one. And then when I let go of that one, I thought, this is it, I'm going to die.
It was this lamppost that the 67-year-old clung onto for dear life as water levels reached around 2.5 feet. Her husband said he never thought he'd see her again.
Then I suddenly saw a pink shirt arm, you know, an arm. And I thought, and he said, hold my arm. I didn't know who he was, hold my arm. And then he shouted to 2 men that were standing in the doorway of the cafe there, and they all helped drag me in there.
Estate agent Stephen Clark is credited by Barbara for saving her life, although he says he did no more than anyone else would have done.
It's a natural instinct. The water was in a torrent down the street. An unfortunate lady was walking down the street and just literally got washed away by the sheer force of water. I think she was pretty frightened, yeah, but the amount of water and the force of water, that's hardly surprising. But I think once we got her out, she was all right.
Chantal Edmonds, BBC Look North, Alnwick.
Amazing story to take back home with that lady. Well, Adele Robinson's still in North Tyneside tonight for us, where dozens of homes were flooded. Adele.
Well, clearly the floods have receded, but as you can see, there's still some standing water here in the back garden. And if you just look over the fence, it's still quite bad for some residents here, just clearly showing that it's still quite deep in some people's gardens. This family, the Lumsden family, they've been affected. As you can just see, most of the devastation's inside, though. Lots of, there's a computer there that's completely destroyed and furniture that's going to have to be completely replaced. James, you're the son of the family here. You were first on scene. Just describe to me what it was like.
First thing I did when I got in was pretty much just get blown away by how much water was actually in the house itself. Found the cat hidden away upstairs, gave him a couple of strokes.
He was all right?
Yeah, he was fine. Came back downstairs, poured myself a beer, and had a cigarette.
And it must have been awful, though, to see it.
Well, you could either laugh or cry.
Okay. Back onto the dad here, Martin. Just you walked for quite a distance in your socks. What did you think, and how do you feel seeing it now?
There's nothing you can say. It's just devastation. It's just get on with it and hope that we can make it the way it was.
Okay. And Michelle, you were stranded in Gateshead last night. Just describe to me how you felt when you saw it.
Devastation. It's I can't believe the amount of water that's just come through the house. It's just unbelievable.
And this plant pot here was floating in the kitchen.
This fern, I can't believe it. My son walked in to find it floating around. It's just unbelievable.
OK, thank you very much. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Well, thousands of pounds of damage has been caused here. For now, for families like the Lumsdens, it's a bit of a waiting game. The ball is now in the courts of the insurance companies. Carol.
Thank you, Adele. Well, some extraordinary stories there, and of course on our BBC local radio stations too. Hannah, obviously a dramatic weather event.
Yes, it was one of the wettest days that we've had for many years here in the northeast. Air with its origin in the tropics, warm, humid air. But the really extraordinary thing about yesterday was how fast the rain came. Let me show you some stats. This was the level of rainfall in Whitley Bay in just 2 hours between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock yesterday afternoon and early evening. 64.2 millimetres. Compare that with the June average. This is the average for the whole month.
Yeah.
That's just over 50 millimetres, so more rain in 2 hours than Whitley Bay would usually have in the whole of this month of June, and very similar in Jesmond as well, in the centre of Newcastle. 49 millimetres of rain recorded there by the Environment Agency, well near the June average, just a few millimetres away from the whole amount of rainfall that we would usually expect to have there for all of this month, Carol.
Unforgettable. We'll see you later for the forecast.
Yes.
Thank you, Hannah. And you can share your storm stories on our Facebook page. The address is on your screen right now. Police have been called to a farm on Teesside after what appears to be human remains were